Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here. We're going to kick off a special month looking at the Siege toy line, especially due to the fact that at the end of the month, Wizards of the Coast will be releasing a new expansion for the Transformers card game, and it is based on the Siege line. So we're going to take a look at Siege toys, and what a way to kick it off than to look at the two classic Transformer leaders. We have Optimus Prime and Megatron. Both of these guys are Voyager class toys, and they retail for around the $25 to $30 mark at stores. Of course, the biggest thing to notice about a lot of the Siege toys is we'll take a look here on Optimus. I'm going to get him up rather close so that many of you can see it. Like right here on the shoulder, there's a lot of scuff and paint wear done on these guys to make them look like that they have been in a lot of battles. Of course, some of it's a little easier to see here on Megatron, like here on his legs. Instead of being solid black, they're all scuffed up. So it does depict them as actually being in battle, locked in mortal combat with each other. But how do they compare to their Generation 1 originals? That's what we're going to show off a fair amount of this month. Not entirely, because not all of them that are planned to be released have a G1 counterpart. But we're going to show off a fair amount, hopefully all that have been released by about this time before the month ends. So let's get started here. Let's of course start off with Optimus Prime, everybody's favorite hero. And as you can see, there is a lot of similarities between the Generation 1 version here on the left and the Siege version on the right. They did retain a lot of the design, but of course it's updated a bit more. And of course they went with a lighter blue color on things like the head, the hands, and the legs, probably to more reflect how Prime was depicted in the animated series overall, as the toy was done in a much darker blue color. Of course, one improvement that most of us fans would appreciate is a redesign of his iconic ion blaster here. The original gun on the Generation 1 form, he holds it from a post here that's in front of the grip and trigger. It's always been a contention point for the fans. Now here on this Siege version of the gun, he doesn't have a obvious grip and trigger area, so he is properly holding his gun. And while it's not shaped exactly the same as the original rifle, it does bear some of the similar shaping to the original gun, so it is nice that they retained that for Optimus. Of course, you'll also notice the new one comes with a battle axe. Well, actually, according to the paperwork here on the instructions, his axe is referred to as a dual-mech Energon strike shield. Because if you don't like holding it there as an axe, all we have to do is remove it from him. The blades themselves can then be folded inward, like so. And the stick for it can be folded back, and you now have a shield. And we can just plug that shield into the side of his arm there, and that doesn't look too bad. That goes rather well for Optimus. As some of you might have also noticed on the Siege toys, like there's some posts protruding here on Optimus's shoulders. That's for a new gimmick that's done with the smaller Transformers in this line. The little Battle Masters, as they're called, all come with a little energy spark like this that can be attached to them in their weapon mode to look like they're firing off energy. But these can also be plugged into these holes on the larger Transformer to indicate that he has been shot. So, quite a nice thing to add to these guys, especially for us adult collectors who may want to display our Transformers. We've got a way to show them in mid-battle. Having those little blasts be attached to them just adds more to the excitement that can be depicted. Now, to compare some of the articulation between the two, it is remarkably different. The original Generation 1 toy had very little articulation. We could move his arms at the shoulder like so, and we could, of course, bend his arms at the elbow a little bit. This one's not wanting to do it. I don't want to risk breaking him. And, of course, Optimus had a little articulation at his knee. You could bend him at the knee just so far. This new and improved Optimus Prime has considerably more. So we can turn his head all the way around, and it can look up and down. He has articulation at the shoulder, so we can rotate his shoulder all the way around. The arm can even be shifted out, about like so. He can bend his arm at the elbow, about 90 degrees. And there is a swivel at the bicep, so he can rotate the arm around a little bit. There is a notch here at his hip, so you can turn Optimus at his hips. You can also move his legs apart, like so, for a full splits. You can raise the leg up almost 90 degrees, and you can bend him at the knee quite considerably. And he does have a joint at the ankle, but that looked kind of silly the way it moved. So pretty much here, this new Optimus Prime has about as much articulation as an old G.I. Joe figure. Quite impressive. Now, why don't we take a look at how both of them look in their vehicle modes and see the differences there. Now, here we are, having them in their alternate modes, and they're both still similar object in the fact that they're both a red and blue semi-truck cab. Of course, the Generation 1 version was based on a Freightliner COE from the early 1980s. And of course, how many of us rejoiced there at the end of Bumblebee to see the Camaro form of Bumblebee drive right alongside this? And of course, the original one also had rubber wheels, so it rolled very good here on the surface of the table. But of course, let's also not forget, the original toy also came with the iconic trailer to complete the look. The new one here, we don't get a trailer. But it is a nice homage to what Optimus would eventually become, and it does look pretty good. It's a little futuristically designed. But all in all, it isn't bad. I certainly don't find a lot of flaws with it. And of course, you got a lot of post holes here on the toy so that you can plug in extra Battle Masters for added firepower. Of course, I also forgot to mention in the instructions, they also show that the two weapons can be combined together to form a single weapon But unlike many of the others, they don't list a name for the one here for Optimus. But of course, they also show for in this mode, you can mount Optimus's gun here on the top of the truck and place the shield here along his backside. And then you have an attack mode truck, whereas compared to just an ordinary civilian semi-truck, all in all, I do like it, very much so. It does harken back to the original toy very well, yet still paves the way for something totally new. And it just looks pretty good. Of course, some of you are probably wondering, how does the new one roll on the all-plastic wheels? Well, pretty good. Almost as comparable as the original on the rubber wheels. Of course, some of the back ones may have a little bit of a difficult time rolling around given the design of the toy, but all in all, he does roll pretty good. So I don't think anybody will really be all that disappointed with it. But let's move on and take a look now at Megatron. Now, not surprisingly, we've got a radically different design here for Megatron. The Siege toy here on the right definitely takes more of his design cues from the Generation 1 cartoon version of Megatron over the original toy's design. And in a lot of ways, that's better for it. But it doesn't take away totally everything from the original, as he still does have the iconic fusion cannon. And we remove it from him and bring it up close here. It does bear some resemblance to a sniper scope, which is essentially what it was on the Generation 1 toy. So, all in all, that's a rather nice and impressive homage to the original. But of course, a secret homage to the original is the other weapon here. Of course, the instructions label it as something different. Instructions say it is a telescopic laser strike launcher, which may be an homage to one of the original toy's extra modes in the fact that it had a telescopic laser rifle. So while it calls this a laser strike launcher, I can see many people confusing it with a sword due to the way it looks. And they wouldn't be too far off. A year or so back, many of you may recall that I did show off many of the Japanese toys that I have in my collection. And of course, one of them that I showed off was one of the original Japanese versions of what would become Megatron. And instead of it having the extra gun parts, it came with a chrome sword, which was a very large and oversized sword. And that's what this harkens back to, really. So I would say that's what that is made to be an homage to. And because of that, I definitely like that. It shows that the designers behind these toys have definitely taken a very good look in the Hasbro and Takara archives regarding the legacy of these toys. So definitely thumbs up to them. I mean, I know I sit here and I mock a lot of the things that Hasbro does, but in this case, this was a definite home run. A nice change that could be adapted well to the current society and still pays homage to where Megatron came from. You can't argue with that, really. Now, of course, their alternate modes are going to be just as radically different as you would expect. So, let's get these guys converted and, well, transformed, rather. And let's take a look at that. Now, of course, here we are at their alternate modes. The original one, of course, was a gun, modeled after a Walther P38 handgun. Of course, this is the original 1984 version. That's why there's no orange tip on it. Of course, we all know it's supposed to be fully decked out, but I wanted everybody to see that version first, for comparison's sake. We'll snap on the accessories here, if we can get Megatron to cooperate. Of course, he doesn't cooperate with us humans, so that should be expected. And there you go, everybody. Get a good look at Megatron there, all decked out. That's, of course, the original iconic look. And now we have the new version, which is a Cybertronian tank. Of course, Megatron's been a tank several times before. The G2 version was the first transformable tank into Megatron. Although, as stated earlier this year, the Neurofusion tank was the one that probably inspired Hasbro to make future Megatrons into tanks whenever possible. And that's what likely has led to more in canon that Megatron's Cybertron form is a tank. That's also due to the fact that gun laws since the 1980s have changed considerably, so making a toy gun is very difficult. And while Hasbro does occasionally put out a Megatron gun toy, more often than not, Megatron becomes something else instead, due to the ease of the gun being confused with a real gun. So, always bear that in mind, viewers, of how the times have unfortunately changed. Now, this full tank cannon here that he has, this part up here in the front, this is actually made from the sword. The sword blades are folded backwards and slid in underneath the turret to form the full barrel of the gun. I mean, right back here, right here, this little thin plastic sticking out, that's the sword. Right there, folks. It is completely underneath it, and it is done in such a way that it allows the turret to fully rotate. Full rotation. This is an impressive design, folks. To be able to come up with a way to put the sword in and incorporate it, and it doesn't impede the toy's functionality whatsoever. Now, granted, I will admit, getting the sword in there is a bit of a tricky hazard, but once you've mastered it in there, it's amazing. You have to give them credit for this new radical design. This just works. Hands down, my friends. All in all, folks, and I'm not going to lie to you here, when the Siege line came out, I was skeptical. I've always been skeptical of the more modern ones, probably just due to bad bias on my part. But of course, that somewhat changed when I was getting the Power of the Primes toys, as I admitted during that review for Hunger, that I did like how the new one did hold up to the original. And in this case, still with the Siege line, it does show that the line is not only still in good hands, but it's actually improving upon the originals. Now, is anything really going to beat the original Generation 1? Nah, not by a long shot. But these new ones certainly do deserve our appreciation, as we get to see a different side to the war for Cybertron, the actual battles on it. This new Siege line is targeted both at the current generation of Transformer fans, that have come about from seeing any of the new cartoons or the live-action films. But given their throwbacks to the Generation 1 era, they're also a love sign to us, the original fans that have helped bring this toy line into the modern era. Of course, we also have somewhat owe a debt to Michael Bay for making the movies, but you didn't hear that from me. But at any rate, I'm looking forward to showing off some more of the Siege toys to all of you. I hope all of you fans out there are looking forward to seeing more of them too. At any rate, this is my review of the Siege versions of Optimus Prime and Megatron. I hope all of you out there did enjoy this change of pace for the year. If you liked the video, please leave me a thumbs up on YouTube. If you're new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button down below and join up within our ranks. Also, ring the notification bell so you'll be notified when I post new content, because this month we're going to go a little crazy with content. Also, please consider sharing your thoughts about Optimus or Megatron in the comments down below. This is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.